And you're live.
Okay, we'll call this special committee of the whole meeting for budget discussions to order at 9 a.m. on January 15th.
Please note, special committee of the whole budget discussion meetings are live streamed and recorded on YouTube. Attendees acknowledge that in accordance with section 20 sub 2 of the Access to Information Act and section 4 sub C of the Protection of Privacy Act, names, addresses, and other details provided when speaking at a council meeting will be publicly shared. Should you have any questions related to the collection or disclosure of personal information, please contact the Legislative and Advisory Services Division for the Town of High River by sending an email to atip@highriver.ca. That's ATIPP@highriver.ca.
Thanks, Jody. I get a motion from Councillor Nychuk, the council adopt the agenda for the special committee of the whole budget discussions meeting January 15th as presented.
Happy to give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. All yours, Jordan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just going to share my screen here. Says the service is temporarily unavailable.
Yeah, and
Stand by.
my screen said it stopped sharing, but it's still up there.
You're up on my screen, Jordan.
Okay.
Would you like me to?
On my screen it says that I'm sharing, so I'm not sure why it's not up there.
Hang on. There you go. Good morning, everyone.
There we go.
I got
Good.
all yours. Which means you have to adjourn them when you're done.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, Council. Welcome to day 2 of our budget deliberations. I'm going to get into our agenda here on the screen. So we'll start today's deliberations with a few opening remarks, which is what I'm doing right this second. And then we'll get into recap of day 1, just to remind us what we went through yesterday. And then I'm gonna walk you through the new GL structure, because it is quite different than we've had in the past. It's sophisticated, but it's also can look very complicated. So I felt like it might be beneficial to show you how it works. You all have a copy of the Excel spreadsheet, so you can click through this during the meeting or whenever you want. As I walk through, you can kind of see how it works. So as you do your analysis on your own or however you want to do it, you'll understand a little bit better of how we've got it set up. Then after that, we'll get right into the operating budget walkthrough. The way that I've got that set up will be to go through that budget booklet, that nicely presented designed version. That's going to guide us through the discussion in that order. And then we'll just let the discussion go from there. And at the very end, we can, leave open for questions or further comments. So to recap on yesterday, basically it was just a general overview of how we approach the budget processes, highlight some challenges that we'll have to work through, and then we broke into in-camera session about compensation. Okay, so I'm gonna get right into explaining how this GL works. So on the screen here, just want to draw your attention to this little area over here. You can see that we've got, the way our coding works is it's broken, generally speaking, between a cost center, which is the LOOO version, and then we've got a GL code. And these work in tandem to organize how the costs will actually sit in our accounting system. We've budgeted in the same way. So the way we've budgeted the numbers that you are looking at is the same way that our new GL system works. So you can see this one, the cost center always starts with a letter, and in this case, I've chosen mayor and council. And you can see that the GL codes always start with a number. In this case, this one represents public relations. So if we ever had a invoice that was coded to that, it would have both a GL code associated with it and a cost center. The way I like to think about it is the cost center is where the cost belongs, and the GL is what it actually is. And between the two, they kind of explain what the cost is. Alright, so what actually changed? So last year, or for the last, I don't know how long we've been in Bellamy, decade, we've had a single dimension code. So both the what and the where is kind of stringed together into one code. And so whether or not it's like a GL, like say it's supplies and a department, is in one code. So if you ever wanted to add a new cost center, say, you'd have to recreate an entire GL list just so that you could capture all of those codes. So that creates managing our structure it's daunting. Under the new structure, because we've got both a GL and a cost center, you can keep a GL listing rather as succinct as we need, and we can just keep adding cost centers as we need them. So if we expand our operations to something else, we can add cost centers without adding GL. It's a much more efficient way of doing it. So you can see this is an example of of the grid basically. So on the left hand side you can see all of our GL codes. Every GL code is associated with a different type of cost. And on the other side of the grid, the columns is the cost center. So there can be numerous cost centers for any particular area. And together, you can see this is how we'd actually code an expense. I mentioned yesterday that this new structure creates a complicated expanse of coding options. We have about 367 different cost centers that we can actually code into. So when we compare 367 cost centers with a full GL listing, and we're trying to present this in a way that matches our old structure, it creates difficulties with how to actually compare them one-to-one on a trend. So, but we've done our best, as you can see, when we go through the actual budget, you can see how we have done a fairly decent job of comparing like cost with like cost. Right. How we use cost centers. So the way we've structured the cost centers is cost centers can be associated with any one of our segments. So I just made a quick little table to explain, like, high level, all the different cost centers in this grid that can roll up into one segment or one area. So you can see we've got vandalism, roads, sanding, spray patching, all of these can flow up into public works. So when we talk about collapsing or grouping, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about all these different areas that we can put our costs in, collapse them into functional areas. So as you can see, like, if you really think about how this is structured, in the future, we want to understand how much money are we putting into sanding. We can actually just pull that one cost center up and show you. Or you could be like, what about snow clearing, snow removal, and potholes together? How much does that cost? So we can collapse 3 different cost centers and show you kind of what that looks like. So I'm sure you could use your imagination, kind of see how useful this could be when we're looking for specific costs, which we just couldn't do before. Okay, but grouping does require judgment though. Like, the way that we have separated our costs, for example, facilities is a great example. Facilities could belong in 2 different places. In this case, if we use the BSRC facility, if we could in one hand say, well, facilities is managed by Public Works. So should we group facilities into Public Works for our analysis? Or would it make sense if we put it into Leisure Center because that's kind of the public facing service that we provide? So for budget, we opted to go with the public facing service that's it's providing, rather than who's taking care of it kind of thing. But again, as you can see, we have options on how we can slice and dice all of our analysis so that we can understand just how much costs are being put somewhere. Alright, so why did we move to this structure? I mean, I've been selling the benefits of this the whole time, since I've started talking. Same GL accounts used across many cost centers. It's so much easier to add options. If we want to learn how costs are flowing through the town, we just have to add a cost center and then start coding to it appropriately. We don't have to add so many more GL lines and complicate our financial reporting for year end. So it's much more efficient that way. Much better visibility across how we're actually spending our dollars. Stronger reporting. If we want to look into utility rates in the future, doing it this way, we can actually tease out certain types of costs so we know how much we should actually be charging for rates. Something we haven't been able to do easily up to this point. And the final reason is that our current accounting system is obsolete. So we have an extension to use our current one until the end of September this year, and who knows how long it'll remain open. We thought that it was actually going to end last year, 2025. So we've been in a rush to get this go live out, but they've extended it almost another year. But it is going away, so we had no choice. We had to come up with something, and I think that the town prior to me starting here made the right choice in going this direction, because the way that the costs are gonna be classified just makes way more sense if we wanna actually understand how our funds are being used. That was the end of my GL structure walkthrough. Does anyone have any questions on how that works, or? Yes?
When I went through the documents, for instance, you see fleet everywhere, which is what you pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the whole budget together, does this reconcile? Is there a protection for leaving any cost center out? Is there a protection against that? Does it have internal controls so that when you pull, say, a budget for us, just a budget document, you are sure that all of the fleets are in there, all of the cost centers are in there?
Yeah, that's an accounting control. So
Yeah.
yes, as we're building out the new processes for our brand new system in 2026. A part of this is making sure that we've got eyes on coding to make sure it's an accurate code. At the town, budget holders and spenders are the ones who are responsible for coding their costs, and then our accounting team just inputs as is. We take a look to make sure that it's not outlandish, like obviously wrong, but it is that's our process. We have the spenders are the ones who code it. Now, as far as the controls are concerned, the process that we'll implement is at the end of every month, we'll do a trend analysis on our GL codes by segment to make sure that there's no weird spikes or drop-offs. It's a more high-level analysis to make sure that the costs are going in the right places, but that will be our control.
So there's some sort of a indicator to you when you're reviewing it that something is either missed entirely or is in the wrong place.
From the accounting side, it's more of an analysis, trending, like so we can see if there's big spikes or drop-offs where we would expect to see an expense. And the alternative is we compare it to budget as well. So once the budget, or when the budget gets approved, we'll have a scaffolding to compare to. So if all of a sudden there's like a cost that isn't in the right cost center, that will flag that this wasn't budgeted for. Is it a misclassification, or is it just not supposed to be there? Sure, yeah.
I would just add one other thing is that once we are up and running and the reports are available, all of the managers and budget holders will have access to sort of look in real time so that they can kind of look and see if something goes someplace they weren't expecting and kind of realize that maybe they miscoded. And then they can request an adjustment to put it into the corrected category, because they're kind of gonna be double checking their own work to make sure that it's coming where they're expecting, because they have gone through their budgets in detail.
I've worked with systems where if you have something either left out or in the wrong place, the system won't let you close. Like it'll say, no, you're not done. There's a,
Sort of like when you're reconciling.
there's a mistake in here, yeah. Anything like that in this program?
Yeah. I think we're talking about like month-end close procedures.
It's just, yeah,
Yeah, just to make, yes, so we have like an extensive list to go through and make sure that all of our accounts are reconciled, that everything is correct. It's pretty standard, like finance operations, yeah.
I just wondered if it was there. Good. Thanks.
You bet. Anything else? Coding? Okay. All right, so it's time to get into it. I'm gonna walk you through the spreadsheet that you already have, kind of show you how it's set up, and then from there, we'll move into discussions. Stand by. I'm gonna stop sharing now, Jody, just so you know, so. I'm not sure what's gonna
Should I
appear.
show something else?
I don't know.
I can go back to the agenda.
Okay, I'm almost ready to share my new screen here.
Oh, well then,
I'll-
I won't go.
Okay.
If it's just a moment. Is that big enough, or? Do you want me to zoom in
I
a little bit?
I can zoom in on myself.
Where's this one?
That's what I was just gonna ask. Where was this one?
Yeah, where's this one, just so we know where to look?
This is the 2026 Operating Budget Council. It's an
It's in the
Excel
agenda.
spreadsheet in Binder 1.
It's in the agenda, in binder,
Binder 1?
Yeah.
which email is that?
But it's also on in the agenda, right?
That's Binder 2.
That's binder two in the agenda.
That's the operating budget?
Yes, sir.
Here. Okay.
The
The one that Chris sent out first. And it's in that email to the level 1.
If you, because this is what was attached to the agenda, I don't know if you can look behind you there. Is that
No.
this
2026 operating
capital
budget.
That's the up top.
Yeah.
Operating, oh,
Yeah.
sorry,
Where is
this
it?
guy.
Do you have your agenda open?
I did, and then I closed it. I'll get there, there it is. Thank you.
Yeah, so I pull that up, I can capital. Binder 2 seems to be capital. Do you
Yeah,
want?
Binder 1.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Okay. All good?
Anybody know how to make this bigger?
A plus sign right there.
You can also make your left side smaller.
Do you want a hand, Counselor?
Got it.
Good?
Good.
All right. All right, I'll draw your attention to my screen, or to the big screen there. I just want to walk you through how to look at this budget, like how I think it would be useful to conceptualize it. So on the first tab on the left over here, I don't know if I might be blocking it, there's a segment tab.
Make our numbers a different.
It's the far left tab on the bottom here. This is the first view that is broken by our general services. So you can see at the top, we've got general government revenue and how it flows into our senior administrative and legislative, that's basically council and senior leadership. And then it drops into our corporate services segments. That includes legislative advisory, financial management, assessment, information services, communications and HR and health and safety. And along each line, you can see we've developed a trend for all of our actuals going back to 2021. This is grouped for comparative purposes, so you can see kind of how over the years, actuals have increased. You've got a year to date. We're fortunate because we delayed our budget into January, so we actually have more up-to-date 2025 figures. These are unaudited and they don't include year-end adjustments, but they're pretty close that we can use them to kind of, I guess, anchor off of for going forward. We've got our 2025 budget as part of our trend analysis, and then we show our 2026 preferred budget. And then after that, we've just forecasted this out all the way to 2030. So that's, and then you can see the corporate services, row 17 is showing the sum of all of those above segments. So you can see like at that level. Going further down, we've segmented for municipal services. We've got public works, engineering, planning, and all of our utilities grouped together to show how municipal services is working with the same trends and forecasts. If you go down a little bit further, you can see community services. We've segmented into leisure, fire and emergency, RCMP, bylaw, family and community support. And then, so you can see, line 32, we've deducted utilities expenses. So if you look above to the municipal services, line 22, we've got utilities with an asterisk. We're showing you that so that you can see how it groups with all of our municipal services. But on the line 32, we've deducted them back out so that we can show you how each of the utilities below are doing in terms of budget. So that we've got our storm, water, revenue and expenses. Because remember yesterday we were talking about utilities are being self-funded. Got revenues and expenses for each. Water, wastewater, solid waste. These are balanced. These are just rounding errors on the bottom lines, but they're effectively zero, and they're forecast. Okay. Moving on. Any questions on the segment view? Okay. Summary is expanded a little bit further. It's the same trend at the top, so I won't talk about that, but you can see how we've collapsed it a little less. We've broken down into a little bit more detail, so you can see on the council level, administrative, legislative, advisory, there's basically more of those cost centers broken out a little bit more detail, so you can see it on a more granular level. But like I mentioned before, because the way our cost centers are structured, we can choose how to group them up into different levels. So this is just a little bit more granularity. Same costs. Okay, and then the expenses tab is the next one over. You can see instead of grouping it by cost center, we grouped it by GL account. So now you can see on a town-wide basis how the different major costs, cost categories trend. And you can expand these using the plus and plus button, so you can see a little bit more detail as we go through of the salaries and wages and standby wages, training benefits, kind of roll up into that payroll amount. So those plus signs, whenever you see them, can expand you to even more detail. So that is the way, this is just expenditures, that's why it's not balanced at the bottom, there's no revenue. Next one over is labor. We've omitted names, just positions, so you can see, and it's also protected because there's some confidential information, but you can see how the current budget is laid out in terms of salary plus benefits. 2026 summary is even more detailed because a lot of times we need to understand what's actually flowing into that. So I'm just going to back it out and give you an example of
Perfect.
kind of what we're looking at. It's more detailed, but that's how the grid flows into the GL, you can see. And then even even further out, our 2026 tab is basically the entirety of our, not the full cost centers, but you can see just how many cost centers are pulling through to get to our budget. You can't even visually see it on our screen, there's so much going on there. All of these little blank bits are all numbers that are flowing into the main budget. I wanted to show you this one just to show you just how expansive our cost center structure has become, so that we can get into such a detailed level of understanding of where these costs are coming from. And then further, all of these tabs are the individual cost centers that roll up into these summaries. So at any time, you can check out the very detailed, exactly what we budgeted in each cost center. And this will go on, if you right click on this arrow here, you can just see how many there are you can choose from if you would like that much detail. Okay, so I know that was a little bit tedious, but I wanted to make sure you guys understood kind of how that functioned. Michelle over here we can pull up some detail on our behalf as we're working through, so we can all look at it together. But that's basically the end of my demonstration for the cost structure. Okay. Any questions on that actually, before we move on? Sounds good. I'm gonna share my screen once more. Okay.
So if we click on any of these, we're not gonna mess anything up.
No, because you probably only have read the whole budget. I think we said it, so you only have read capabilities,
Okay.
not editing capabilities.
Yeah, it's not gonna change our, yeah, that's your you can mess with that one all you, well,
No, it's in a shared folder.
yeah, it's a share folder, if you, yeah,
It could mess it up.
yeah, it could mess it up. But if you save a copy on your desktop, you can mess with it as much as you like, yeah.
Have you noticed I don't mess with it?
No, I don't.
This here, this,
So, yeah, the new structure gives us the ability to drill down to give you very specific. So when we talk about service level conversations,
Yeah.
say line painting, and we want to increase the number of crosswalks in town, we can actually give you detail to say, this is what we do right now, this is what the cost increase is going to be, and whether or not you want to make that determination increase the level of service. And that goes for the same for all the other levels of service that we have there. So it gives us the tools to really come to you guys with good information when we are requesting a level of service change, or that the public could come to us with a level of service change that council wants to see. We can give you the cost of what that's going to be. So instead of a guess about how much stroke clearing on pathways is going to cost of $200,000, that was ballpark at one point in time, we can come to you and say, this is what we think it's going to cost.
Okay,
It makes it way easier for us to be able to, rather than a 4-foot binder, trying to dig through that this, you can get, what, like you said, whatever level of detail you want. You wanna go into size 0.25 font. More than welcome to, right? But what you want is there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jordan, well done.
okay, thank you. Alright, so then, now, I'm not sure how you guys want to proceed on this. I do have an order where we can structure our discussions. So I can start on that.
Let's do that and then we can rewind with council questions.
Otherwise, we'll be relevant.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll just be a mixed bag. You continue with your flow first.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is extracted from this beautiful looking budget report that our communications team put together in partnership with finance. And so this is basically the Coles notes of the budget. It's right here. This is the preferred budget that we're presenting. Revenues we're gonna talk about on the last day, cause that might change depending on discussion points. So we're just gonna move on to our expenses. So here, this is our expenses for comparing 2025 last year to 2026. This is broken out by expense category. You can see that all of this stuff matches right back to your spreadsheet, so it's basically just pulled directly from there. You can see the changes in this middle column, that our expenses overall have gone up 2.2.
Yeah.
Here's a breakdown of different funding sources as it is right now. So on this page, you can see just how much of the funding is being, or the type of funding that's flowing into the town. 47% from taxes, and you can see licenses, permits, operating grants, transfers, investment income, we've got a good chunk coming from there, and then all of our utility revenue, which is about 26% of town's revenue. This is the same expense categories as above, just you can see the percentages this time. We've got payroll at 47.8%, all the way down to pulling out amortization on the back end. Okay. These are our operating expenses for the year by service type or by area. So municipal services, unsurprisingly, comes in at about 43.9% of all of our costs. Senior administration legislative at 1.8, corporate services 14.2, and the community at 40.1. Okay. This is much the same. It's the same information presented in different ways. This one is more of a trend on a budget and forecast basis. Senior admin, we've got all of our corporate services that are laying out here. For corporate services, you can see $71.2 thousand difference. We've got municipal services with taking up the bulk of the increase at 2.1 mil. And community services has an increase of 683. Capital budget we'll talk about on Monday, so we're just gonna skip over this section for now. Now moving on to the more individual by service area. Good looking bunch of folks right there. So the highlight here is for senior administrative and legislation has seen a large drop this year. This is not because of suddenly we're spending less. This is just that our categorization has changed. So before, actually Michelle, maybe you could explain this a little bit better than I can. Before we had different types of expenses that were going into these categories for comparative in the budget, but because we have a stronger cost structure, we've been able to allocate them down, but is there something you could add to that?
I think it's also gonna be, that one's gonna be affected by the grouping that in the past, our customer care representatives were considered part of, or overseen by executive, but they've since shifted over to the communications and engagement team, so you'll see a corresponding jump in communications that you're seeing in a drop in executive or the administrative piece. And I think that would probably be your main change. I'd have to double check how the numbers were done, but we also were doing some adjustments that maybe, no, that shouldn't affect it, sorry. We pulled out the global adjustments that used to be in the executive in prior years, so they should, otherwise it would be generally comparable.
Okay, perfect. Moving on. This is our corporate services. We're going into legislative and advisory services. So our operating expenses budgeted last year was 1.3 here, slight increase by 164, and we're now sitting at 1.46 million, we'll say, or 49 million rather. Not much to show there.
I was just going to say one other context for the legislative is that we do have a new insurance provider this year and then going into next year. So currently the insurance is centrally budgeted for legislative. then as we get a couple of years' experience and we get it honed out, we'll try and make it more granular for future budgets.
Thank you. Financial services. Naturally, it's gone down. Assessment services has gone down as well. So as we forge into the future, our efficiencies get better.
You're taking your pay cut.
All right, information services, a slight bump up. As expected, we have a few more things coming down the pipeline, but it's only 42,000.
Can I just add for this one
Absolutely.
as well? This is another one that has always traditionally been centrally budgeted under the information services umbrella, but we're hoping that over time we'll be able to kind of look at the different services that Kent's team are providing to the different departments and try and sort of flow those out so that they're going to be allocated across the different departments and cost centers that are using the software and the other electronic services, basically.
Thank you. Communications. Now, communications has seen a slight increase here as well, for good reason. I'll have Michelle explain that one as well, if you don't mind.
That's the,
For what reason? Sorry.
it's the corresponding increase when the customer care representatives were moved from administration into communications and engagements.
So, just a question. When we're looking at these expenses, and we've looked at payroll before, and payroll, presumably some of this is payroll?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so how do we, when we're looking at a budget, how do we know that we're not adding payroll here and payroll here?
What do you mean, double
Like-
dipping?
Like us looking at it or them?
If we're trying to analyze the budget, how do we isolate, or not isolate, but how do we make sure that in the payroll line, we're not also capturing payroll for communications if it's included in the communications line?
Right, yes, this is a matter of grouping. So we have, all our GL structure is set up for payroll and all the different types of expenses. So for these kind of analysis that I'm showing right here, we just collapse them all together into one singular line. And if we wanted to expand them out again, we could pick out just payroll, for example, for human resources and health and safety.
So if we wanted, when we're looking at a budget, we wanna see the overall payroll, how will we see that?
Yeah, so we'd slice and dice it the other way. So in my previous, I wonder.
But you can slice and dice it, I'm just wondering how we slice and dice it.
Yeah,
How do we work at this and make sure that we're not, I think the word was double dipping, for payroll or any other expense, like fleet?
I like that shows on that Excel spreadsheet, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Where you can pull it right, and you can pull the payroll, it's got its own tab
Yeah.
under labor, right? So you can click on labor, and you can see the exact number on your labor of,
That's the sheet I can't find.
Okay,
so the big Excel spreadsheet, what's it called?
It's what Chris sent it out.
Yeah,
30, 20, 26.
yeah.
30,
20, 26.
Sure, the labor went on.
Let's go back. So if you go into this document.
I know that's not good.
Okay, gotcha, all right.
I know, we talked it off. It's kind of, that's correct, even from my.
Those are the tabs you're talking about.
Yeah.
Just maybe show you one other piece of context.
Sure.
That would help. These are gonna give you just the labor numbers, across here, you get a 5-month thing, but also if you go if you go into the 2026 summary, you can also, go up to the salaries and wages line, and then you can match it up to planning, community development,
That's what.
So that's what I was looking for.
So that if you scroll over, look at communications here, and communications there, it should include both. This communications column will include communications and customer care, and here you'd actually be able to find the separate ones. So the 2026 is sort of almost hard on the cost centers, and then 2026 starts to include some into departments.
Thank you.
We good, Vicki?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, human resources has gone down. Michelle, do you know the primary reason? It's not very much, but no.
Have to double check.
Is there any, like global changes?
They're just careful like you.
Okay, good, yeah.
But finance naturally went down, maybe human resources also.
Yeah, there we go,
I
exactly.
can, if people are curious, I can try and dig into any specific questions.
It's not an increase.
Not an increase. All right, now we're going on to, oh, sorry, too fast. Community services, this is leisure services. So you can see we've got a planned increase on leisure services of 191,000. Fire and emergency services has a moderate increase from last year's budget, 8464. RCMP is seeing a $500,000 increase. Bylaw,
And that's protecting against these retroactive payments, et cetera, that we may see.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that includes all that. Yeah. Family community support's gone down a little bit. Now we're moving on to municipal services. It's beautiful. Public works as a whole from last year's budget has gone down.
Is this just because when you look at what they actually spent, you're changing it, or was there a reason for the change there?
This is a comparison between the budgeted amount last year versus the budgeted amount this year.
I know, but to do that change, like 113,000, like what would be maybe a particular reason for that?
Like like what would cause a decrease, you mean?
Yeah. Because they didn't spend it, or maybe another change in the way it's structured?
I mean, the zero-based budgeting really uncovers a lot of changes that like, cause they don't anchor it from the last year.
Okay.
So that would explain some of it, but
Okay.
Michelle may have, like with every one of these, we can dive into and look at like, hey, what's actually driving these changes? It's really hard to actually say, the reason for changing is this, because there's so many multiple factors that go into every change. But sometimes there's like one big one that can point to it.
But next year technically will be easier, correct?
So much easier.
Yeah. Yes.
This is difficult, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and some of these changes too, it goes back to that reallocation of resources when we realized that, hey, you know, for example, in operational expense, there's probably some of solid waste that was,
Yeah,
put into there.
100%.
The wage category. And now that we pulled that out, that's probably some of the changes that we're seeing down below, because we set it up as its own self-funding utility.
Sorry. Thank you.
Oops. Did I go there? Continuing down. Municipal services. Planning's gone up, 23. Okay, now we're getting into stormwater, wastewater. These are utility ones that have their own revenue. We balance these. The reason we balance these is because we assume excess is being put into reserves for those categories, that there's no surplus, that everything gets saved for future reinvestment. You can see kind of how that flows. Solid waste, etc. Okay, so that is the budget booklet. Now, I wanna point out that this is budget to budget comparative, so what we budgeted last year compared to what we budgeted this year. On your spreadsheets, you've got a much better trending view. You've got your actuals going back to, I think I had 2021, all the way through. You can see the same budgeted numbers are showing here for 2025, plus year-to-date, estimated year-to-date for 2025, our preferred budget. So that is actually a much better view than than just budget to budget, especially because we've got those actuals in there.
And the other thing too, I know that we pulled the RFP out for the solid waste services on Monday, but we've still got the employees and running that entire service, as well as you'll see in the capital plan, the acquisition of 2 new garbage trucks in the budget, just to kind of protect from that perspective, depending which way we decide to go when we get those actual prices when the RFP completed.
Great.
When you do a budget, like a forecast for 27 through 30, how do you factor in things like increase in tax dollars or tax base, or is it just like a number, like?
It's pretty, I mean, there's some things we know for sure we can change. I can't remember exactly what ones we specifically added, but by and large, just given, I mean, there's so many changes this year, it's mostly like an inflation forecast.
Okay.
And we assume revenue, that it balances at the back end. So we don't add any like variation to how we calculate our revenue or anything like that. It's pretty basic. We make very minor calculation differences, yeah.
Okay. The other assumption we use too, we take a look, our growth rate, when you talk about growth and development, we take a look at the 20-year horizon, not necessarily the last 5 years, because you're gonna have your peaks and your valleys. And I think that number came out to about 1.4% growth over a 20-year period. And especially because
You're talking a year, right?
Yeah, a year, 1.4% per year. So we use that kind of, add a little bit of contingency to it, so that we protect it, so we can do the forecast, and then knowing that every year things are going to change, because again, staff remain optimistic to achieve some things, but you never know what kind of scuds that they may hit that derails them from trying to achieve some of their things that they have in their work plan and their work program, that it ends up being in surplus and going forward.
So at this point,
Cannonball?
that's the end of my presentation, basically. From here, I'm not sure where.
Well, let's open it up to council as to questions on the operating budget. Time to get at it.
There's a lot of information there.
We'll get through it.
Questions, concerns? Chris? Like, is there any highlight areas for you that, where you see successes or issues?
Well, I think what's really great about this budget, we've had pretty much almost a new team of budget leaders, budget managers, especially in public works and recreation. So we've had different eyes on it, and different approaches. And so that's kind of been refreshing when you combine that with that zero-based budgeting approach. It's kind of re-identified some priorities and where we should be focusing some of the dollars. You know, Jason, when you take a look at the capital budget, Jason Facilities has done a fantastic job of building out what the preventative maintenance program for facilities and buildings is. And so, while he would love to do it all this year, we know human capacity-wise, he can't, or financially, because it's a big dollar number to catch up. So we have to figure out a phasing approach to phase that over the next 3 or 4 years to do the catch-up. So I think there's some real great things that I've learned through this process. Love the fact that we have this detail now that we can actually take a look and see clearly what spray patching costs a year. and whether or not that's delivering good results or not good results, or is it just a Band-Aid fix for, maybe we need to come back to council for microsurfacing versus free patching, right? So we'll be able to make those decisions, or get that information so we can help you guys make decisions when it comes to road rehabilitation, for example. So it's really useful. I think because of the change, there's so many other, and the expansion of the aquatics facility and that impact, and the RCMP impact, I think those are the highlights that I see. You know, moving forward, we're maintaining the levels of service the way they are, and increasing the aquatic side. The RCMP, I do think that we need to probably have a conversation as we approach 15,000 to kind of just do some research and analysis whether or not our own police force.
That
Makes sense.
He's got it.
Move on.
Well, in the projections, you haven't added any of that, I just,
No, we haven't.
it's kind of,
Yeah.
So the operating budget for us is the easy part, unless there's an area that council sees that they want to dive into as to whether you want to increase or decrease that level of service. Obviously, we know with an expansion to the aquatics facility, such as comes with it, comes an increase in costs with lifeguards, et cetera, double pools, all this stuff. Now, the labor end of that pool, we have to remember, because of the restructuring of the way we're doing lifeguards, the majority of that labor cost in that pool is because of the restructuring, and that's moving primarily from the casual lifeguard gong show that we had. It was unfair to us, unfair to the staff, unfair to the public for the level of service. So because of what happened over the last couple of years, we obviously restructured that. That's what the most of that. But there is, because we expanded the whole facility, there's increased costs with that. We know that. The council also has to remember what lane they're in, and our lane is not to get into the weeds of how many pieces of photocopy paper do we use per day, and what does that cost us, right? Like that's not where we're at. We put an enormous amount of trust into our staff, and Jordan, Michelle, I gotta tell you, I love the way you guys have put this together. It's the first time that we've been able to, and I know it's a transition year and it's not as tight and perfect as you want it. But for us, it's so easy to go through here, and if there's a center that somebody wants to dive into, you're 3 clicks away from getting to it. So, so I guess that's where I'll open it up, is there a cost center that you're concerned about? Is there some level of service that you've heard from the community during the election that you've brought back in, or through your time here, that, you know, maybe we need to increase it? Maybe we're not giving the community what they're asking for. Is there anything like that that's we want to dive into? Because where we really jump into making decisions is always on the capital end of things, because that's where we get to pick and choose really how much money we want to spend on new stuff and projects, and because that's what's going to affect the tax increase more than anything else. So, but if there is something that's a service level with anything that Jordan's just presented to us, any of these departments that you think we need to dive into a little bit more, maybe it's snow clearing, right? We all know that when 3 inches of snow hits, rant and rape goes boom. So, you want to chase rant and rape and double our snow clearing budget and put more salt down and all this other stuff? Well, now's the time to get at it.
Well, just on that, cause on it's sort of combining between the two, cause one's a capital,
Yeah.
which is the replacement of said snowplow, cause it's the only front one. Cause do we have a cost of what we pay out to, Volker to do that, like where we're at and what would our labor be to, cause like as was mentioned, you drive back and forth across 12 anyway, all the time to get to anywhere you're going. Is how much is that actually costing us, which would help us in the capital side of it, on the decision on a truck. I know it's kind of crossing over. Then the only other question I had is in the 2026 summary tab, at the bottom when it says check flags, what does that mean? And it happens to come up under recreation, it's 913,985, and it just says check
Yeah.
flags in the, and I'm like.
You caught me out on forgetting to hide that line. Well, we do check figures all throughout, so like, as we build out summaries, we always match it back to our source.
Right.
And so we'll have check figures to make sure that everything's tying through properly, so you're seeing just a check flag is like one of those.
Like a reminder?
Controls. It's like a control,
So this is
like to
kind
make
of
sure
what
it's
Vicky
tying
was,
through.
but this is kind of what Vicky was asking about, that when you run the report, it pops up that flag and then you can check back into it further.
Yeah.
So that kind of answers what you were, it just like I said, it just happened to come under recreation, but it just said the check flag, it was a big number, so I was like.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's part of our process.
I don't see a check flag.
It's under summary,
That's where I'm at.
at the bottom.
Everybody wants to see.
Yeah, like,
Go back.
tries that effect on that.
Okay.
Oh, that summary, I was under this
Let's
summary.
focus on Garth's question regarding the, Volker's contract with Center and 12th compared to,
Oh, that's great.
yeah, right, Riley? Sounded like it hurt. Whether we contract Center and 12th out to Volker, like what's that look like compared to, us buying a new truck and taking care of it ourselves?
Cause that truck, I think, is scheduled for replacement.
Yeah, T49 is on the capital list,
Yeah,
and it's, that's for.
cause that's the only one that we have with the front plow.
Yeah, and you can actually do 4 lanes with belly plows too, right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit more coordinated, so you can do it with bellies, and it can achieve the same results, so, at the end of the day, it's a conversation that we've had every year about whether or not we like this level of service that Volker's providing to us, cause they also do the summer maintenance on Center and 12 when it comes to line painting,
Right.
so.
They're so good at that.
But should we not be?
And so we can certainly, I don't know the actual contract number for Volker's contract. We just signed it.
in the year-end summary from the summer.
Yeah,
Like if we look at Nicole's report from the summer.
yeah,
But wouldn't there be a line we could pull up in this that says we paid Volker?
there should be. I'm just trying to find it.
Find the budget line.
But then it's also capacity and timeline, right? Like, because people expect it to be done before people start going to work.
But Volker
the same
does,
thing, right?
yeah, cause they've gotta do the highway first.
Yeah, they've
They're
got.
gonna
We're
do High
secondary.
River last.
Well, and that's fine.
Not last.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying like, like, you can start in town, but by the time you get to,
Well, you're right, Jenny, because there is a staff impact on taking that on. Our staff are.
yeah, it's not just getting in
Flat out
a truck.
already with snow
If now
removal.
you're
Yeah,
gonna
it's not
have
just
2
the
or
truck.
3 trucks out at a time, I want to look like.
And also, what does that do to our priorities? Does that become priority one, so our current priority ones are now second on the list?
Yeah, and I think, we can certainly build that analysis, right? Because I think that's easy enough for us to put together. We can pull, we can put together some staff costing And so you compare that to the Volker's contract. Now, Volker's contract for the annual is not just snow plowing, it's also the line painting, so we have to take a look at the invoice and see what kind of detail they provide us on that.
I just thought it would be a good part of the other side of it too, when we're looking at the capital side, whether that's really a necessity or.
Yeah. Well, and certainly,
That
our
equipment gets expensive.
staff have been asked, when you're driving, especially center, when you're driving center, drop your belly plow. If you're driving it anyways, you might as well have
Scrape it down a little
scrape
bit.
it down, right? 12 is a little bit different of a beast, because you have to be a little bit more coordinated from that perspective to deal with in essence, 5 lanes with the suicide in the middle. So you've got those types of issues that you have to wrestle with, but we can get those numbers for you.
We have one number for snow removal from Volker, just for, 45,000. That's in the budget.
For the snow removal.
Yeah.
On the trucks, 550, 600,000.
559, 6.
Well, another staff member would be more than that.
Yeah, and then as staff member, are you half FTE? Probably. So there's another, what's a FTE?
What's
With benefits,
Forty.
you're probably 120 or something.
Yeah, for an equipment operator, it'd be about, for half FTE, would be about 40,000, 45,000, what's benefits are.
Probably.
So you're pretty much close, except that they own the equipment instead of us.
Yeah.
So labor costs are,
Well, then, in the summer, then we'd have to, that would be the full year, right? For covering snow clearing.
and
Whether or not we have enough work for the summertime, right? That would be the other challenge.
Really quick and dirty, we don't have the cash outlay contracting it out. Like, simply, it's cheaper to use Volker than it is to capitalize it and function it ourselves.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, it's a service level conversation.
Yeah.
Volker's pricing is pretty reasonable,
Yeah.
if you can get them to perform.
Yeah, it's their service level that's, comes into.
Kathy?
Can I assume that should we remove solid waste, or contract solid waste, we've talked about needing that certain point FTE, but that person probably wouldn't be an operator of the same level of what we would need for this,
Probably not.
correct?
So, that's the struggle a little bit with this budget is when there's some what ifs. We have, whether or not we contract out garbage services. We also have the curbside recycling program starting up by Circular Materials in the fall. And whether or not they take over the recycling center and its entire operations too, that could come out for 2027. So there's things that are out of our control still that we can't answer today, or even in the next 3 or 4 months until we know exactly how Circular Materials is gonna roll out some of their programs.
Just for clarification, Chris, the RCMP, did you say we would know by March?
We won't, well, their fiscal year ends at the end of March, so what we'll know is what the credit will be for their officers that are down, and whether or not there's a significant credit or not. And so then that way we can make the decision at that point in time when we see the year-end actuals, whether to allocate some money to reserves to offset either the back pay or, which we already have funded here, or the increase to past 15,000 to $1.1 million and change that we're expecting to hit in probably 2028.
So speaking of RCMP, I'm looking at line 79, service consulting. And I go over and there's a column under RCMP. Is that, looks like 3,204,000.
Which tab are you in, sorry?
I'm on the 2026 tab,
Okay, 2026 tab.
line 79. And I go across and I find consulting, RCMP. Under RCMP, is that miscoded or?
That'll be the service number.
That'll be the contract.
That's the RCMP contract.
So
That's the main service.
we put that under consulting? It looks like we did.
Yeah, I can move it to service operational.
Well,
I designed consulting to be sort of,
Any outside source?
well,
Yeah.
no, 'cause all of the service ones end up being outside sources. We still sort of have to figure out how everyone's going to use them. I sort of was looking at it from a capital perspective, so that when we were doing a capital project, the consulting would be the engineering architects, and the operational would be the actual construction team. So in looking at the RCMP, because it's kind of a professional service, versus just purely, well, just purely, but versus sort of boots on the ground doing the specific labor, that's kind of where I put it into consulting. It's kind of a categorization on the statements, it would,
I just wanted
It would
to make
roll up
sure
the
we weren't
same.
consulting on how to work with the RCMP.
For that kind of money.
Some of these titles we may change too, over as we learn through it, because this could be very well better named contracted services, right? Which would include consulting services, would include Volker Step, would include the RCMP piece. So, you know, we can always change the title, that's the value of this system too, is that we can change the title. So, yeah, so consulting includes contracted services. So anything that it's a contracted services that we have an agreement with will go into the consulting side.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to know why we were consulting with the RCMP.
Yeah, no.
Thanks.
Any other questions about the operational side?
Thank you for making it easier.
I'm just more about the system, and the system doesn't matter.
Oh.
That's your guys' problem, don't worry about. Where GL codes is naming conventions and how that transposes over a historical period
Yeah.
is of interest, but that's kind of more of my business brain and what we do, so I'm just gonna leave that alone. That really doesn't matter where we're at in this council.
Line 84, we seem to have, and again, is joint administration twice for two different amounts. And they seem to be the same. Nope, there's a P and an F. What's the difference between a P010 and a?
P is the parks code, so it's for the outside of the building, and then F is for facilities, so it'll be the inside of the building, so that we can
Okay.
look at what it's costing to, and those are, again, are also going to be, we'll work on right sizing and making sure we have sufficient detail, so it's meaningful for our parks team, and broken out that way.
Do you have any coding charts
Like,
that would help us, so that I'm not bothering you with that kind of a question?
Yeah, we have coding charts, like what we, you can answer that.
I can put the grid up so you can kind of get a sense, it's massive because of the 367 cost centers, but I could.
It is in one of our packages, isn't it, all the GL codes, or, like, there was a listing, like, it was like 30 pages of them?
Yeah, that's, yeah,
Okay, so
more
that's
than 30, it was like.
Yeah, there was,
Yeah.
yeah, you just kept scrolling,
Yeah.
and it was just all GL
Okay.
codes.
So that's what I can use as a reference.
Within this spreadsheet, you have all the GL information you could ever ask for. But if you want it in a more in like a grid pattern, we can definitely provide that. It's just, I caution you, if we sent that to you, we're talking about 367 different cost centers across, and then I don't know how many GL codes we have, so it's expansive. But, I mean, we can provide anything you need that you'd
I'm
like
fine
to see.
with this, I just need to know what the,
You know what, Vicki, we'll take a look and see if we can make a cheat sheet.
that works.
So we'll see if we can make a succinct cheat sheet so that there's a descriptor of each code.
basic.
Yeah, just the basic aspect of things, so that it might be easier to navigate, so we'll take that back and
Sure.
see what we can create. And I wanna add one, oh, go ahead, Michelle.
I just have one other thing, is that we went live on the 2nd of January, so what we're using here is theoretical. And what Chris was talking about later about naming and all those changes and that kind of thing, is once we kind of get that experience that we will sort of be right-sizing, renaming, working on what the categories look like. So there are some, I think I mentioned too with insurance, that we have it centrally budgeted right now. As we get that experience, then we'll make sure that flows through to the budget going forward. So it will be a sort of an experience here for the first implementation.
One thing we didn't mention is that all budget managers had a say in how the GL was created, right?
Yeah.
They all had the input of what kind of information they want to collect so they could do their analysis and understand exactly what the service is costing. Because they were always struggling with our 240 code, that was the catch-all for everything, about pulling out detail to help create their budgets, because they couldn't, say for example, do what it costs to contract out line painting, or to do it internally with all their labor costs. And so they couldn't really do that easily. They could do it, but they'd have to go through months and months and months of payroll and labor codes, as well as then all the invoices to check if whatever paint, is that line paint, is that house paint, right? Like, and so this is a system that's gonna help our staff analyze their services much better than what we could have in the past.
In family and community support services, there is a decrease of about 70,000. She's usually really good about not necessarily coming forward and asking for a ton of money. They always need money. Do you know what maybe that decrease entails? And not really.
But Sonia knows the answer to that one, but she's not here. I can't answer, but we can get back to you on that one.
Okay. It's in the, it's in the budget report, under family and community support. I mean, she usually comes and shares information, but she, doesn't usually ask for a ton of money. And
No, because it's, there's a 70-30 kind of grant split that we work, because it's 30 FCSS. Some parts of FCSS are fully funded by the province, like the FRN is a good chunk of funding from there, and then the FCSS is kind of a 70-30 kind of split, where it's 30% tax funded from municipal taxes and 70% grant funded from the province.
Sonia's looking.
So
She's listening, so
she can't talk, she's lost her voice though.
she can type.
So at the end of the day, we can get that answer and have that for you for Monday.
Can we put in a GL code for lozenges? Do we know how many GL codes we have? So we have 367 cost centers. How many, are we at a count yet? I'm assuming we're probably continuing to add.
We're holding for now, right? Like we hold and trial the system for the next 12 months, and then we reassess later this year, early into next, to see if there's something missing. We think everybody thinks we're pretty exhausted. And there may be some tweaks to the naming conventions, like consulting services versus contracted services, right? Training versus travel kind of thing, right? Those will be things that we tweak over time. But I don't know the total number of GL lines.
We'll pull them up here, but I don't like adding more
show it,
GLs.
But I've got about 230 chart of account GLM accounts, and then 367 cost centers. That currently includes capital, that may change slightly, but do you want me to share my, did I just use?
No, it's just curiosity, thank you.
It's just I could give you sort of the scroll that kind of.
Well, and I guess that's the other piece too. We've integrated capital into this kind of system as well, right? So instead of capital having its own project code elsewhere, it's going to have a GL code that specific capital item will get a GL code coded to it, and we move on.
It just makes it easier to capture information.
Oh yeah. Right now, Riley can attest, trying to reconcile what's tracked by the project manager versus what's being paid and what's going through finance is sometimes an exercise in futility.
Everyone wants something different. And so everyone's number is a little bit different. So when you look at, engineering works primarily off how much is being committed. They have no interest in how much has been paid or spent, because all they care about is how much they've committed against the budget, because that tells them, can I process the next change order or not? So for example, on the pool, we signed a contract with Shandos for, I forget how much,
25 million.
25 and change. Engineering, all they care about, I've committed $25, or $25 million, I can't touch it. Where they are in the spend rate in terms of that, as long as it compares back to the original contract and is in line, that's fine. What they're interested is how much is left between the 25 and the 28, because that is what is still available to commit or spend on something else, whether it's a change order or a scope change or whatever it may be. Finance is very concerned about how much we've spent to date, less so about the contract or the committed value. They're really focused on, end of the month, how much have we committed? Is there enough money in the bank account? Where's that flow going? And so we do look at very different numbers, and sometimes trying to reconcile that can be a little bit challenging because there's a time component there too.
Who tracks that committed amount, like would engineering do it or?
Engineering does.
Okay.
So finance typically tracks spent to date. Engineering tracks it as well, but engineering does focus more on the committed.
The change on here shows that you've lost your contingency.
Well, the 240 line code is gone, yes.
Means I'm going to have to ask for it more.
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah, that was certainly when I first started here in 2019 and 20. There were things that were coming across my desk that I'm going, where's this coming from? Like, didn't see it on a list anywhere, didn't see it on a capital list, didn't see it on an operational list. And there are some practices that we've fixed since
More
then.
checks and balances.
Right, like, selling a piece of equipment and then buying a new piece of equipment, that was kind of a process that in operations that they used to do, right? So they'll trade in a Bobcat and buy a new Bobcat. We'll get a trading value and we'll apply it there, right? But that's not how we should be functioning. And so we've corrected a lot of practices, but that 240 line code was a catch-all for everything like that. It was a big number. When I first got here, it was a huge number, and it was just like, what's in there? And then you try and pull out what's in there and understand and analyze how we're spending money and tracking the expenses. It was an extensive process for finance to actually go through that. Like there was a couple times when I asked for specifics on, say, spray patching or line painting or something like those and get my head around it. And it would take them 3 days to pull the numbers because it was just searching invoice after invoice after invoice and highlighting and highlighting and highlighting. And so we want to get to a point that it's all automated, that we can say spray patching, bang, there's the number.
Yeah, that makes sense, for sure. Absolutely.
And this is all Microsoft-based, like our financial software system, not including the revenue modules.
It goes down.
Is all Microsoft-based. So we know from a software perspective that our financial system and our GL system probably will never go away as long as Microsoft's going to be alive. Whereas if it was like another proprietary software package for our GL, there's a risk that it's going to come to end of life like Bellamy has after 35 years of using Bellamy, right?
Wow.
No, you never.
So they just discontinued, Bellamy is just done, or somebody bought them out and?
Yeah, well, no, they pivoted to OpenGov, which is a different platform. We didn't sign on to their GL portion. We worked with MMP to come up with the GL, and the partner for the revenue modules is Sylogist that will plug into the business dynamics and feed in the revenue modules for utilities and everything else. So. But it's been a year-long project, year and a half long project.
So it's making your job easier, like your department overall. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff right now.
Right now, it's not easier, but yes, it's gonna make it,
You can see
so much.
light, right?
I just can't wait for just to be able to couple clicks of a button and just produce a report rather than like a slog to pull out certain things like,
Huge efficiency.
huge,
Yeah.
more efficient and more accurate,
User friendly.
user friendly,
Yeah.
And that was one of the recommendations when we had Jeff Nadeau review our service levels within finance in 2023, I think it was. The first recommendation was a modern finance system. right? And so, you know, we're finally implementing pretty close to the last recommendation from that report, are all the changes within our finance department, so.
Good job.
Any more questions on the operations? I know there's a huge amount of information, you guys had.
I mean, I would hope that if
6
there was
days.
something that really popped out, like, I mean, you did highlight a few things and gave us some answers, that would be something you'd bring up.
For me, the basic question, I think, just for council is, are we happy with service levels? We brought that up before, but really that's where this comes down to. Do we all feel that the service level across all spectrums is fair, warranted, meeting the needs or the requests of the community? I mean, I'll say right now, I think we're doing that quite well. There's always little things that you can improve on. I mean, I tend to be the guy that sometimes comes to meetings and points out weeds, or, you know, we didn't sweep this street or that. That clean and bright kind of stuff, I want my community to look nice, so I'm always kind of harping on those little things. But does that mean that I think we should add $500,000 to the budget for another street sweeper and, you know, half an FTE to go run it so that Michael thinks the streets are cleaner? That's a Michael thing, that's not a community thing. I don't have 100 people at my door knocking and saying, hey, pick the weeds. So overall, I think we're doing a good job, but I mean, there's 6 others here that sit in these chairs like I do, and maybe, you know, you guys are hearing different things. I guess that's my concern. Are we as a group, are we doing what we need to do to fulfill the needs of the community? So that's where it sits with me, is service. Like we can analyze and drill into items, and you know, I've got a great amount of trust with administration that I don't need to drill into the nth degree into an Excel spreadsheet and understand what the piece of paper is costing. I have to have some trust in through Chris and his team to manage those things appropriately. But I'm here to represent the people and what they need and want and what they're asking for, and make those decisions with you guys. So it's service. And are we failing somewhere right now? And I don't think we are, but if, you know,
Well, and when things
I'd like to hear it.
do come up, we do discuss and talk about it too. I mean, there's always gonna be issues when it snows, especially now that we have no snow and we're gonna get another snowstorm. It's going to be an issue. But I don't feel that, I mean, I do feel the town does their best, and if there is a one-off of something, and it's put out there, I feel it's fixed, it's taken care of or addressed. I, at this moment, don't have an issue with the service levels, and, you know, there's always going to be, the snow thing is always gonna be an issue that we have to deal with, but how much money do you put out for 6 inches of snow that, you know, may only last a week, so.
And I agree too. I think we do have really good service levels. I think it's more maybe a communication thing about expectations, or maybe not even expectations, but here's the levels of service, and here's what it looks like, and here's what you can expect, and you know, maybe if we can just keep plugging on that and be clear, but you know, there's only so much you can do in the weather conditions in Alberta, and with so many plows and so many streets, you can only, when you have 3 plows or 2 plows, you can only be doing 3 streets at a time. There's only so much you can do, so. When we look at snow, and I think overall, I think that is the biggest one we hear about, but I think overall our service level is pretty good for a community of our size.
I guess at budget time, what I focus on, certainly the service level is important, you know, that's why we're here. But we're also here for oversight, and that's why I really like the zero-based budget approach. Because when it hasn't been done zero-based for a while, there's an opportunity to find savings, money that's been spent in previous years we don't need to spend. And so that's the only point of my drilling down, is to help to find savings to make life easier for all of the staff. Because if we raise taxes, we'll hear about it a little bit. You'll hear about it every single day. You know, and my goal is to make life easier for residents in terms of taxes, and for you folks, because you have to field all the answers. So this is an opportunity, from my point of view, to do spot checking, a little drilling down here and there and everywhere to see, okay, have we missed anything? Is there an expense that we don't need? this year. Is there any way, okay, dollars add up? If it's $150 here and $2,500 there, that adds up. And it allows us to be more flexible in other areas where we would like to be. So that's my approach to the budget.
Well, I like what is sort of, what everybody said too, is I like the fact that John with the zero, started zero, that was what, you know, I think even through all of ours campaigns all the way through, that was one of the ones they wanted to reset, find out where everything was, where it should be, where it started from. And I think you guys done a great job on that. And, you know, as far as road wise and stuff, the only thing I would say that if we could add somewhere is not snow removal, but just even golf. So I was out under Volker, cause that one, you just about swallow a car just by the turn off, at the other end. I know it's been
Oh, that
posted.
one, yeah, that one always pops up, yeah.
Yeah, and I know in some of those is just the construction and, you know, I was in that business for a while, like building roads, and if they've missed a spot that didn't get compacted right, it's always gonna show, it's never gonna be a perfect thing, but if anything that I would say would be, that would be somewhere that I would consider, like as far as the road side of it, would be just somewhere, and if they're responsible under their contract, I don't think they are, they're just cleaning and painting, but that would be the only one of the ones that, you know, that somewhere in there a little bit more into being able to maintain what we have.
Well, and Garth, that's one of the level of service changes that we made in Public Works too, is that we've gone to a more hot patch versus a spray patch aspect of things too. Like we made the change going from using cold mix or spray patching to actually doing hot patching in some areas, especially when we have recurrent potholes that pop up. You know? And so, you know, that's one on the east end. I know it's right at that turning lane going into the vet office there, right?
Yep.
I know exactly the one. I hit it every single day. I can't seem to avoid it. I know it's there, I can't seem to avoid it.
Well, it's just right at the spot, either you gotta go into the other lane or hit the curb, so it's just right in your wheel path.
Yeah, and we fix it, that's one we fix almost every year.
Yeah.
Every spring. But you take a look at the pothole issues that we had around no frills at the entrance off that road. You know, instead of just patching it with cold mix or spray patching or even patching the pothole itself with hot mix, we actually did a much larger asphalt patch.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we get longer life out of that. Hopefully it reduces.
Yeah, you recompact that a lot more too
Yeah,
in there,
yeah,
so.
right, so, you know, that sees a lot of action, a lot of turning action of big and small vehicles that just wears that asphalt out over time. But there is work that we have to do on 12. We do need to get better stormwater drainage, and, you know, if you take a look at, you know, from all the sanding, because of the shoulders, they kind of built up, so it creates some ponding issues. So that's something within the roadworks work plan for this year, is to shave that down so that there's positive drainage going in, because then that'll allow us to have the asphalt last a little bit longer as well, you know, the whole point.
Yeah, I know the one on 12th, that was when everybody reports on rent and raves that the town's flooding again.
Yes. Right?
Is that what
The
gets
one
deep?
on, by the traffic circle,
Yeah,
are we taking care of that one this year?
it's in our.
It's in the budget.
capital.
It's in the budget.
It's in the capital.
In the capital.
There's caveats on it. There's not enough grade, so what we're proposing, we're jumping ahead to Monday now, but essentially what we're proposing would make a marginal improvement in terms of the drainage, but because there is a grade issue, we can't actually fix it in its entirety. We are looking at larger solutions, but we have to chase it back a bit. We're currently updating our stormwater model for the town, so we're actually looking at it again as part of that exercise. But unfortunately, that information won't be ready for budget.
Yeah. That's fine.
So, I'm gonna ask this question, so as far as operations, I know we still haven't talked about revenue generation. We did talk about the gap, if you recall, yesterday, that 93% gap piece. And we did talk about a tax rate increase of some kind to cover those, as well as the compensation, this conversation that we had. And we'll see those numbers on Wednesday next week, those revenue numbers and what that translates into a tax increase. And then we can have a conversation if there's other things that we have to drill down to as well. Like, it doesn't close just because we have our last meeting next week. If there's another meeting that's needed, we can have another meeting, right? And so I think that's kind of the process. This is really fluid. Like, this is, our approach has always been collaborative with council, right? Working together, here's what we think, let's work through this, and have a collaborative approach on trying to solve problems jointly. You hear it more on the streets than we do. We get the complaints, but you hear some things that we don't necessarily hear that people won't file complaints about, right? So we want to know those things too. So we'll still have some time, but if there's no more comments on the operating side of things, we can give you guys like get the time back and go from there.
We'll steal some time.
Okay.
I brought up service, and if we thought it was good. Vicki brings up a good point about understanding where all those costs are and managing that. And us being some eyes on that. And, if Vicki's passionate about that, that's cool. I'm not saying everybody does the same thing at the same level, but if that's her interest, I think she's getting good answers on how she drills into that, and that's good. I'm going to bring up one that we continue to talk about, and we probably talked about this, Kathy, way back when too, was business licensing. So there is a revenue for business licensing, but there's a cost to it as well. And I didn't drill it. I could look up those numbers right now, thankfully, with what you did here, but it's top of my head. Does it serve a purpose? So here's an item that has a revenue, has an expense. I don't know if we're on the positive or negative side of that. You guys can tell me that. But is it serving a purpose? If it's costing us and it's not serving a purpose, to me it seems something that we could negate, right? Immediately, whether it's $1 or $1 million, right? We're decreasing the cost and improving that within the budget. So I'm throwing business licenses back on the floor because we continue to talk about it and we haven't ever done anything with it. It just continues to perpetuate. My opinion, from what I know, is that it serves very little purpose. It's a function that we have every year, but does it really do anything? Does it provide value to the business to have a license? Does it provide value to the town of High River to implement a license and a licensing fee? And I'm not so sure that there is any kind of a benefit to it. So there's obviously human capacity that's taken up with that, and a few other resources. But things are kind of flowing along here, so I have to throw something out there that we need to dive into.
So I can speak to, I want to probably bring up pet licenses too.
That's another one, sure.
Because at the end of the day, there is revenue generated. Certainly, I'm going to speak about dog licenses right now. It is certainly a tool that our bylaw enforcement helps to return those animals back to the people if they lose them. But there are other methods, right? You don't necessarily have to collect a fee. You can just adopt a dog bylaw that says you have to have a license on your dog that says phone number, contact information, end of story, or that they have to have a chip, because we have a chip scanner, or we can't have access to a chip scanner, and we can return your dog to you. Or it goes impounded and we have an impound process, right? So dog licensing, because my experience with dog licensing is that some people lose their dogs and they get a reminder in the mail that they got to license their dog, and I've faced it with individuals in tears saying, I don't want this reminder any longer, right? And because they don't inform us that their dogs have passed away. And so, there's an easier way, and an easier way to do that with kind of going to a mandatory license. So I think, I think pet licensing is about $30,000 revenue hit, so it's not a big
20.
number.
20,
right?
yeah.
20. Yeah. Business licensing, it's two components with business licensing. One, there's the in-town, which is about $70,000. So all the bricks and mortar businesses, home occupations is about $70,000 hit. And then there's the out-of-town contractors, that's about $70,000. What we've, certainly business licensing, safety codes, fire inspection really likes business licensing as that flag to go and do an inspection. However, there are ways that we can work through it, if we, given some time, to create the systems that don't require a business license to flag them. Now, this is my opinion, my professional opinion. I do believe that we keep business licensing in a form for those out-of-towners. Those ones that don't have bricks and mortar in town, that just come in for festivals or come in for the weekend or whatever, come in for the farmer's market, they still need a business license. And I think we need to figure out what that rate actually is. Does it make sense? And does it make it equitable? Trying to make it as close to equitable for the period of times that they're here, to compare it to a bricks and mortar investment, right? And so I think we have to do some work on that, but I think there is a role for certain types of business licensing, but I think if you're talking about our permanent businesses, I think there's ways we can get rid of it, and still have the checks and balances for safety codes and fire.
I agree with you on the out-of-towners. It's just, for me, it's a safety factor.
Yeah.
If somebody's going door to door, and there are a lot of, in the summer, a lot of door-to-door appeals or businesses, and not everybody asks for a business license, but it's nice to be able, as a resident, to say, have you got a business license with the town? Then there's less likelihood of a senior being scammed or whatever. And that's the benefit, it's a safety benefit for the out-of-towners, not so much an income generation.
Yeah, and there's been, I can tell you at my house, door-to-door salesmen do not come any longer, because I always have a business card at the front desk, and I always say, do you have a business license? They typically, 80% say no, and I said, well, come see me.
Please do, yeah.
Right, and they don't, Rogers doesn't show up anymore, Telus doesn't show up anymore, right? All those door-to-door people, and I feel bad, because a lot of them are students, in the summer months, a lot of them are students just trying to make an income based upon a commission, right? But at the same time,
Again, if we make it equitable, it's still not gonna be a big deal for them to take a business license, or whoever they're working for.
What about home base? Like, so when someone applies for home-based business license too, they put up a sign and, right, your neighbors know that this could be coming.
Yeah.
What would happen to that?
Well, with home occupations, you still have to go through a development permit process, right? So you still have to notify, you still have to advise, you still have to post that there's a development occurring there for a home occupation. And that includes your signage associated with it. So we still have the catch for that piece for home occupations.
Yeah, I think that's important.
And so, I think we have those things, and that's why I asked, give us time, not to take it away this year. Give us the next 12 months for 2027. We can take it away, and then we can come back with a good system so that council is fully informed of this is the system. We have confidence in it. I agree. Life safety is really important because. The changes, it's amazing when you walk into businesses, and this is the other change that we're trying to work on too, is within the fire department, is when we have spare moments, getting all our captains certified so that they can do safety codes inspections too. So that they can just go walk the street, not necessarily make an appointment or get a business license, just walk the street and do the annual inspection for our downtown businesses or all our businesses. Say, hey, you can't have a shelf blocking a fire exit. Or you can't put a lock on that door blocking people out from using that fire exit. Or you need another accessible washroom, those types of things, so that we can have those conversations.
But more on a friendly approach. So on the business license for your external, that does include, because then they're obviously flagged for their insurance, their fire safety, everything else when they go to apply. And I'm thinking more of the food trucks and that, so for them to apply, then they have to, the same as the Kinsman trailer has our stamp on it from the fire code and health and safety, and it's always been there.
Yeah, and it's this, and so like a lot of those food vendors come to town, we're seeing more and more requests for food vendors in particular, and even just goods vendors to use sidewalks, parking lots. And we made some changes, or I think we've got some changes coming up to our food vending policy too, to allow them into some of our park spaces. Because, we haven't been lucky getting, for example, a concession operator at the spray park in the summer months. And we trialed putting the food cart up there during the hot days so that people get drinks or popsicles, or a hot dog or whatever, and it's met with great success, right? So opening that up, and even in George Lane Park, a lot of interest from food vendors to be in George Lane Park, to provide levels of service. Now, we don't want to take away from downtown businesses either, right? So it's a balance, and that's why you have to be equitable. So if you're going to come in and use George Lane Park, there's a rental fee and there's a business license fee, right? And so we try and make it equitable as close so that it's a fairground.
Because if they're just getting it for nothing, it's pretty hard to compete against it with a store, with a brick and mortar. Can't compete to what they can do, you know, not that those trucks are cheap, but.
No, but at the end of the day, a lot of people buy the food trucks as a demo to start the business and see if there is a desire, because they're offering a unique, be it, you know, pierogi poutine, I'm just gonna use that as an example, right? A different food that people, my heart's tightening right now, I'm thinking pierogi poutine. I'm salivating. And you just don't know, people have ideas and you want to give them that flexibility to try ideas in your community. But it also has to be fair and equitable for those businesses that made the investments in downtown or on 12th Avenue or in the Northwest, so that it's fair. And so whatever the structure may look like. So, you know, I'm glad Councilor Nychuk brought this up, because this has been something we wanted to talk about for a while.
Would there be a benefit in the year that you're asking for to put this policy together in involving the chamber?
No, yes.
In developing that policy, what's gonna work, that isn't going to harm them, but it's maybe gonna benefit the community?
Yeah, we would have some engagement aspect of things, especially, you know, at the end of the day, I've always questioned, what do we use the business licensing data for, right? We don't really use it from a business attraction perspective. We don't use it as a marketing tool. It's kind of this inventory, check and balance. Do you have your license? Yes, right? And so I think, you know, it's always a rush in January to get all the renewals out, and, you know, people are getting upset because, you know, their renewal letter came late or whatever, right? So, you know, and I do agree that there's a cost, and I'm not so sure the cost is being covered by the $70,000 that we charge for
Trying to drill into it,
permanent costs. It's hard because it's CSR's coverage, it's planning coverage. But we can certainly, eventually we'll hopefully get there too, but we can certainly give you some kind of premises based upon how much time it takes for an annual business license. We have 360 some odd business licenses in town, something like that. We don't capture them all, like, let's be clear. We don't capture them all, but we do spend time, like we spend bylaw enforcement time going after the ones that don't get business licenses either. So that's not figured into that cost as well, so.
But there's also fines associated with that.
Yes.
There's not be, so. I guess here's a
But
question.
I can guarantee you, we've never given a fine for somebody that doesn't have a business license. I'll ban everything I own.
No, that might be fine, but here's a different question. Why aren't we drilling into the numbers or using the data, right? Like, what is the data that's there? Because it's just like this data, like, who cares if that data is there? Why aren't we drilling into it? Well, we're drilling into it because there's actually useful information there, right? I guess I'm just being devil's advocate in this case.
Yeah, I guess if we had more, like, you know, some communities have their business licensing bylaws very detailed, right? That there's a different license fee for restaurants, there's a different license fee for retail businesses, consultants, all those types of things, and they use it as an additional tool to your land use bylaw to restrict businesses. So if you don't want more pot shops or, you know, inappropriate businesses in your community, then you can use that as a restriction, because you can regulate. And courts have been very supportive of communities that have regulated to say, hey, you know, you can't have whatever inappropriate business that's there, you can't have that, and courts have been very supportive if you've regulated through your business regulation aspect of things. But at the end of the day, we don't see that really as a problem, and Alberta's a little bit different jurisdiction than others when it comes to the free capital spirit, so to speak, right? But at the end of the day, we see Yeah, like from us administratively, we see the regular business licenses for those bricks and mortar in town. Outside the safety issues that may come up with renovations or something along those lines and informing them they have to get permits. Other than that, there's not a lot of value in it. Because we just collect, you got a general business license. Business license at the distillery is no different than the Rexall down the street, right? Now, we can get into that detail if you want, but I'm not so sure it's value.
I'm just worried that if we take something away, like a program like that, and then let's say all of a sudden River blooms to 25,000 and we, council at the time decides we need to have a business license, then we gotta recreate it, right? And it's just because, I mean, this is a little aside, but I've talked about it a few times, is for safety reasons, we need to, in this, my opinion, we need to start looking at backflow prevention programs again. Or having a safety program, because what many people sitting around the state will probably have no clue about is a backflow prevention program actually is a protection against our water, right? There's a lot of grungy things out there.
Sorry, Jamie, I'm not hearing the word prevention.
Backflow prevention.
Backflow.
Yeah. So we don't have a program in place. There's services out there that will do that for us at no cost kind of thing. Or it actually can create revenue for us, but that's aside. I don't know. There's just creating a new program. If we take business licenses away as time goes on, there's going to be much more onerous to do. That's my opinion.
Why would it be, sorry, I'm not questioning what you, but why would it be more onerous? If you took it away now because it doesn't serve any purpose, you implement the program, you implement it, why would it be more onerous if they constructed something 30 years down the road? If, you know, once population grows and it's that size, you put in the right appropriate program for what you have then. Because right now, it's pretty basic and bare bones, right? There's not a whole lot of complexity to it there. To what Chris was talking about, and regulating what you may or may not have in your community in terms of a business, that's an entirely different prospect than what we have now. And I think that's more to what you're speaking to. So maybe I don't see the risk in eliminating what we have now, if it was the proper thing to do. I still need more information for me to say yes or no, but you know, to that level where we would have that down the road, and to kind of some of the context that Chris provided, I think that's a much larger construct that would be much more detailed, and I don't think if you want to call it a foundational piece we have now, would even be relevant to that then. But
and that might be, but I'm looking at it from just even creating systems within my business. It costs money and time to dismantle them, and it costs time and money to implement them again, right? And we already have it, so it's not costing us to implement it, it's there already. That's all I'm just saying, the system exists. I honestly think maybe we need to look at that whole piece, as whether it's business licenses and, you know, and I'm just gonna say, Michael's business, okay, you got a business license, and then you also got, I'm gonna say backflow prevention, you've got 6 that you have to do, and it just becomes actually a system in itself to maintain all the different aspects of what we require for said business to do, because a home business might be different, right?
You know, Jamie, I'll just add to that. You know, my experience is I'd rather have a bylaw in place and a policy in place that we have a backflow prevention registration system that supports the documentation, so that, and we do the proper education program to educate the public and businesses how important it is to keep our water system safe and secure. Having that and having businesses pay a fee associated with that approach versus a business registration aspect of things.
How many businesses do you know, though, that have glycol systems, right?
That's gonna be part of the process, right?
So that's that's a different level, but there is glycol systems out there on fire protection systems or backflow prevention systems, and we have no testing procedures in place. to verify that they're actually done, right? That it falls back onto insurance, and insurance can't even tell if they're done properly half the time, but anyways.
So I think that's a separate almost
Yeah.
a separate conversation, right? Because I think there's water security that we have to really
Yeah.
start focusing on too.
Yes. I don't know, that's just a whole system, right?
So leave that with us, we'll add those in for consideration for 2027 budget, right? I know that's not quick moving, but we've already sent out the
Okay.
renewal, we've already sent out the renewal letters,
Yeah,
right?
so what does that mean, consideration for 2027? We're gonna talk about it again in 2027?
We'll bring forward a plan.
Maybe implement it in 2028?
No,
Because then we're just keep kicking the can down the road.
No, we'll bring forward a plan early.
During this year?
Yeah, during this year. Yeah. I've got it written down on my notes. And that's the same with backflow prevention, we'll get the water utility to take a look at what that involves, right? 'Cause
Yeah, I think it's with what Jamie was saying, it brings up something that's more holistic in nature for a few different aspects.
Well, it's really, really important, right? Because at the end of the day, we came across a situation last week where we didn't know certain things were constructed and we're gonna have to remove them. And the risk of what they installed as well as how they tied it in it puts our water system at immense risk. And so we were just advised of that last Thursday, and so now it's building the plan to say, yeah, we gotta work with that group to remove it. You can't do it that way, and go from there. So we're gonna be working on that over the next couple of months, but, you know, we need to make sure our water system's secure, right? And that there is no risk to cross-contamination, in any form, no matter, especially after treatment, right? Especially after treatment. You know, you're right, we have some high-risk users, like, you know, I've seen, you know, irrigation companies where they have automatic fertilizers and weed pest control that are tied into the irrigation system with no backflow preventer,
Yeah.
right? So there you got.
Residentials.
Yeah. Especially on residential, right, no backflow preventer, to prevent that pesticide or that fertilizer from entering in the system.
That's a discussion we can have, and I mean, I can add something down the road that we should talk about, because it's more common than one would think.
Well, for sure, right?
Yeah, contamination, whether it's at waterworks side or external stuff like irrigation or fire protection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else operationally?
Did Sonia have, Julia, did Sonia have anything?
I didn't see anything come up.
She was suggesting that some of the FCSS decrease could be because some of the things that were usually budgeted in there have been centralized.
Okay.
But I can also take a deeper look just to see if, I don't know if that would address the entire difference because it was, I think, larger. But that'll be part of some of the negatives in multiple departments, is just
Yeah, oh, I'm good.
offsetting.
Yeah, this is good. Thank you both. This is.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just gonna, I know Shelley's made sure that she's zeroed those cost centers of hers at always zero. So it could also be affected by if she has different funding levels and those kinds of things could also affect costs.
Right.
Well, yeah, and it depends on her level of donations too, right? So the revenue that she had brought in, because we try and, you know, the grants that come from the province as well as some of the donations that she does receive, that may have been a factor too. We'll get the information from Monday. We'll have the information from Monday what the breakdown is of that draw from FCSS.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions that we can take away that we can bring back and have answers for you for Monday?
Just a general question. All of the figures in the spreadsheet for the budget, are they based on invoices and estimates, or how did you come to plug these figures in?
Every budget holder was responsible for their budget area. So some of them I can't speak to every single budget holder how they did it, but that was our instruction to them, is if they have detailed information, like can refer to an invoice, use that.
Yeah.
Look at their contracts, is there a step increase in the contract, use that. And in some cases, like even though they weren't supposed to anchor off of prior year numbers, sometimes that might be prior year actuals is the only thing they have available, so they might use that as a base and then make adjustments per. But I can't speak to every budget holder as to what their approach was. But that was our instructions to them.
So it depends on each department as to how they answer, or budget holder as your.
Yeah, that'd be more accurate to say. Yeah, thanks.
Well, I guess I get to adjourn the meeting, the special committee of the whole budget discussion meeting on January 15th, 2026 was adjourned at 10:57 a.m.